everybody. Welcome to Santa Clarita's hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. You're listening to Gazette Radio Hour with Doug and John. It's the radio digest version of the Santa Clarita Gazette and Free Classifieds, and you can hear us every Friday at 1 o'clock.
Every Friday, Doug, you're right.
Every Friday.
Hey, you know, Doug, last week you did a lot of complaining.
What, me?
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, here's a shock.
Me?
The last couple of weeks you've done a lot of complaining. I actually brought somebody in who might be able to fix some stuff.
Can I complain to him?
Yeah, you can complain to him. You know who we're joined by.
I do. He's sitting right next to me.
Go ahead.
Mr. Scott Welk.
There you go. Now you've got somebody to complain to. Assemblyman Scott Welk from Sacramento. Actually, from Santa Clarita. He's down from Sacramento to visiting.
I'm home for the fall. We just got out of session a week ago Saturday, so I am home for the fall.
You know, we got, believe it or not, there's some listeners out there that may not know much about you. So how about some background, where you grew up and how you came to get into politics and that sort of thing?
Sure, great. So I'm a rookie. I was first elected in November 2012. So this is my first term in the state legislature. Prior to that, I served on the Santa Clarita Community College Board of Trustees for 6 years. In terms of my professional background, has been half in government and then half in business. I own, but I'm about to close, I think, a public affairs company because that's billable hours, and I have no time to bill. Married to my wife Vanessa for 30 years, 2 adult children. Lived here since 1990. Although I did go to do a startup company about 15 years ago, and I was gone for a couple of years, and was actually born and raised in the Antelope Valley. It was always my goal to move to Santa Clarita Valley, so that was a happy day when that occurred.
That's right.
August 2nd, 1990, and I remember that vividly because it was the day that Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait.
Wow.
Oh, there you go. So, as a local person, here's a question I bet you've never been asked. Do you get asked a lot of questions about local politics, or do people just come to you complain about stuff at state level?
No, I get local questions as well. The thing that's interesting, so you know, when I still live here, but you know, when I was here as you know, a regular person, I knew everything that was going on in this town because people talked to me. The minute I got elected, people quit calling me. And I'll call people, go, hey, how you doing? They go, and I go, how come you never call? And they go, well, you know, you're busy. And, you know, it hurt my feelings at first, but, I've been friends with Cameron Smythe for 20 years, and I did the exact same thing to him. When he won, I only called him when I needed something because I knew he was busy. Yeah. And I knew a lot more before than I do now in terms of local stuff. So I have to depend on local media, like, you know, the KHTS and the Gazette and the Signal and all that.
So. Well, if you want, you can give your cell phone out over the air and people will call you.
I'll give my cell phone number out over there. My personal cell phone number. Now, there's some politicians who'll give a cell number.
Yes.
And it's the second one. My personal cell phone number is 661-713-4794.
And only call him if you want to update him on local politics, right?
Or whatever. I'm pretty loose about giving it out, and honestly, it's not really. Only a couple people have abused it, and so.
So how do you feel about the billboards?
I don't have a position on it. Well, you know, that's one of them. Like, both sides are going, are you going to endorse? I'm like,
staying out of that one.
Staying out of it.
What about as a personal citizen driving down Soledad or Railroad Avenue? Any thoughts there?
Well, it's mixed because, you know, one of it, you know, you kind of have an eminent domain situation in terms of, you know, a local company. So that's one. Two, I think they're a little bit of a eyesore, but 3, you know, although they were in-kinded to me, I had some billboards in the last campaign, and I had no idea how effective billboard advertising was. Yeah. So I'm conflicted on the issue, and then again, I've not read the contract to see if it's that good of a deal for the city.
That's a big thing. Is it a good deal? And I mean, everybody can see the good and the bad.
But I want to back up a little bit. When did you first get interested in politics? I mean, did you run for student body council in high school?
I'm one of those freak kids that I knew at a very early age what I wanted to do, and I never had any doubt. In fact, it's interesting. So my last week of session, my scheduler came in. They go, hey, there's a constituent out here who wants to see you. I'm going, well, go ahead and bring the person in. They go, no, you have to come out. And I go out there, and it's somebody who I grew up with, who actually now lives in Sacramento, but had seen me. I toured her. She works for a nationwide company, and I toured their facility, and they talked about me in the newsletter and had a photo, so she saw that I was an assemblyman. So she just came over to say hi, because I hadn't seen her since I was 18 years old.
Oh, my gosh.
I said, this is what you've always wanted to do. I'm so happy for you. So
that's kind of a neat feeling to have that. I got the same thing. I wanted to go to law school when I was in the 3rd grade. Well, stupid things. Now, looking back now, did you make the right choice?
Yeah, I think, you know, I love it. I mean, it could pay better, but, you know, it is what it is. But I know when I wanted to get a degree in political science, my father goes, I'm not going to pay for that. And then my dad, who never says he's wrong, about 4 Christmases ago, Christmas Eve, he goes, "Oh, I might have been wrong." That's the only time he's ever said
That's
it.
probably a pretty good Christmas present.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, that was
All these
actually.
years
I
later.
actually was pretty pumped about that.
All right, so let's go back. Let's go back a little bit further. We're not quite that far, but the campaign. Did you?
one?
Last campaign. Did you enjoy it? I always talk about people, who don't enjoy their campaign process.
Yeah, I enjoy both. I really like going out and mixing it up. I really try to be out there. I worked hard. I was on a street corner every morning for the last 60
Wow.
days. Had so many people later say, "Hey, I voted for you. I didn't know anything about you, but if you really worked that hard to get my vote, I'm assuming you're going to work that hard when you get to Sacramento." So no, I love it, and more importantly, my wife loves it. You can't do this without the 100% support of your spouse, because it's harder on them than you. So like when you get creamed in 50,000 mailboxes, I let it roll off my back. They take it more personal.
Right.
She can say bad things about me, but no one else can. And so it's harder on the family. So yeah, you have to have a special spouse to do this.
All right. Well, let's take a break. What do you think, guys? Listening to the Gazette Radio Hour with Doug and John on AM 1220 with our special guest, Assemblyman Scott Wilk. We'll be right back.
You do need to know, folks, and that's why we're here, so you can be in the know for, what's our slogan, John?
You did it again.
I know.
You're using the song as a cut, as a
I know, I can't help
shortcut.
it.
Tell
Just
people who
seems
we
so
are,
natural.
Doug.
Hey, the station is Santa Clarita, hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS, and this is a Gazette Radio Hour with Doug and John. We have a very special show today with a very special guest. Assemblyman Scott Wilk is with us.
Now, Assemblyman, you were talking earlier about going to Sacramento for the first time. Were you shocked about, with regard to how the process actually works?
Yes and no. I mean, I'd been chief of staff to 2 state assembly members in the 1990s, so I kind of thought I knew how it worked, but what I didn't know what I didn't know until I got there. And the fact of the matter is, if you have 41 votes, you can do whatever you want, and the majority party does. So they can kill stuff, they can steal stuff, and there's really nothing you can do about it. So case example, State Senator Steve Knight had a very important aerospace tax credit bill, and he worked on it for 6 months, got out of the Senate, came over to the Assembly. It was for either Northrop or Lockheed to be able to access and put it in their quote, because the next long-range bomber is going to be coming up for bids, a $55 billion contract. We wanted them to be competitive. It's going to be about 1,100 jobs in Antelope Valley, but it's going to trickle down here because we've got a lot of defense subcontractors down here who are going to benefit. So anyway, so he got it, and then the majority party stole it and then gave it to the Democratic member who represents Antelope Valley because he's got a tough re-election, so he could get credit for it. Now they allowed Steve to stay on as principal co-author. And again, when you're in our position, it's all about the policy. So if it's good policy, you're going to support it. But it's not right, but it happens all the time.
Yeah, it's got to be tough as a minority up there. I mean, you basically, your hands are tied. How frustrating is that?
You know what? It depends what it is. Like, we were talking off mic
Right.
about, I had a bill to reform workers' comp, but was working with the administration, which is of the other party, and put together a coalition of business and labor, and then they took the bill from me, and then they never did anything with the bill. Now, the rest of my bill package, I had 7 bills, all small, because again, that's all I can do, all on the governor's desk. He signed 3, 4 I'm waiting for his signature. Okay. I was principal co-author of the film tax credit, which is very important
that's
to this
huge.
region.
Right.
And again, but it's because I have a personal relationship. It was joint authored by Mike Gatto, who's the Approps chair in the Assembly, and Raul Bogranegra, who's chair of Rev and Tax. I've got a very close relationship
Right.
with Bogranegra, and that's how I got in the mix. So there's always a moving line in terms of being partisan and drawing a contrast between your vision of government and theirs, and also working together for the good of the state, and also to further your own personal legislative agenda.
So my question is, it's not a personal question, but emotionally, how do you handle this? I mean, I'd be the type of person, that way I could never have your job, because I would go crazy if some guy pulled that on me, which would not be good, and it's not diplomatic. But are you able to control your emotions, or you do have to let go sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, it's like it's like Festivus. Serenity now. It depends. Most of the time I'm okay, but at the end of session, both last year and this year, you do. So the last the last 7 days of session, I think we had 1,069 bills we had to go through. And when you're like losing, then at some point you get, or what they'll do, they'll put a bill on call. So you could beat a bill 3 or 4 times, but they keep bringing it back up. You can't do that in the Senate, but you can in the Assembly. And they browbeat people on the other side, and then they eventually capitulate, and then you lose it. So I get a little testy, that last week. Like we had there was some legislation here having to deal with charter schools. I didn't like the bill. I thought it was too broad. I found a way to narrow it. Proponents didn't, but it passed. And then when it passed, I put out a statement. If I'd written the statement the next day, it would have been a little less testy than it was when I put it out. And I've apologized. Where I was on the position, I'm fine with. Rhetorically, it would have been a little different if I had been in a different frame of mind. But it is what it is.
That's the problem. Is there a lot of give and take on those things? Because I'd be like, well, no. Well, if my no is no, unless you want to make your no a yes.
Yeah, I've never seen any vote trading, which is illegal. Yeah. There's give and take in committee. Mm-hmm. But by the time it gets to the floor is almost always pro forma.
Right.
It's scripted in advance, and it just it is what it is. Although sometimes, again, we beat stuff back, but they're allowed to call it up, and they've got a whip team, so they go around and do it. It's interesting. So if the speaker of the Assembly normally sits in the back of the chamber,
right.
But if it's something that it was a he, now we have a she, Tony Atkins from San Diego.
Right.
If they want it, then they go sit at the desk, and that's a message to their members that you better vote for the bill. I remember a bill last year, we defeated it 3 times. They brought it up a 4th time. That time the speaker got up. There was 2 whips standing over a legislator, and she was crying when she voted yes. She did not want to vote for it, but she did.
Wow.
Governor vetoed that bill, though, so good for him.
So it kind of works out. So looking back at your first session, okay, what do you think was the most important piece of legislation that you had to deal with?
That I had to, well, I think there's a number. We're going to have a real water bond that the voters can be able to vote on on the ballot on November 4th. That's Proposition 2. We actually have a real rainy day fund that people are going to be able to vote on. That's Proposition 1. And the only reason why we have a real rainy day fund is because there was 3 indicted Democratic senators. Because to put it on the ballot, you have to have 2/3 in each house. So that means we had to be brought to the table. Because the original proposal the governor had, you could drive a bullet train through the loopholes he had in there. Because that's how he was. He was going to fund the bullet train.
Right.
Because he had bond indebtedness as one of the methods you could use. So those are going to be real reforms that are going to help Californians. And I had a seat at the table on the rainy day fund in terms of negotiating that one.
Oh, that's good. Okay, we won't even talk about the bullet train yet. We'll save that one for the next segment because that one's just going to...
What about the grocery bags? Oh, never mind.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
Oh, we can talk about that.
Okay.
I voted no on that.
That one just... What happened to paper bags? That's what I want to know. I mean...
Well, here's what I said. What happens a lot. So one of my big frustrations up there is that there's no voice for small business. It's the agenda is big government, big labor, and big business. And like if you look at, and they've been supportive of me financially, which is great. But Cal Chamber, if you look at their board of directors, it's all big business. And big business, they aren't as concerned about taxes, and they're not as concerned about regulation because they can absorb those costs and impedes from other players getting into the market. So there's like no one there fighting for small business. And the whole thing on the plastic bag ban, first of all, there's no data. The data is conflicting in terms of whether it's actually going to, reduce garbage or reduce our carbon footprint. Right. But the thing I found most upsetting is when you read the bill, it says in there twice, both the times in Section 3, that retailers are supposed to charge at least 10 cents a bag. It's just another revenue source. So here's big business trying to pass on the cost of instead of fighting regulation, that you want to pass on the cost to the consumer. I said no, but I lost.
I had 10 cents a bag. Don't even.
And that's coming to Santa Clarita, right?
Statewide. The governor's going to sign. There's no question.
There's no question he's going to sign.
Yeah. All right. We listen to the Gazette Radio Hour with Doug and John on AM 1220 KHTS, Santa Clarita's hometown station, with our special guest, Assemblyman Scott Wilk. We'll be right back if Peter works the board right.